time is right. Feeling so alive. High vibe, yeah, it's all divine. Feeling good tonight. Lay back is right. Feeling so alive. High vibe, yeah, it's all divine. Feeling good tonight.
government scared of me, yeah. And these people trying to murder me, yeah. And the government scared of me, scared. That's some third world problems you ain't know, you ain't know. That's some third world problems you ain't know, you ain't know. That's some third world problems you ain't know, you ain't know. That's some third world problems you ain't know.
If being radical is grasping from the rules, that's just what I'll do, that's just what I'll do. If being radical is grasping from the rules, that's just what I'll do, that's just what I'll do. If being radical is grasping from the rules, that's just what I'll do, that's just what I'll do. If being radical is grasping from the rules, that's just what I'll do, that's just what I'll do. They needling in kente handkerchiefs, calling them George Curry. Instead of sending Brett Hankerson to jail, judge, jury. Yeah, the sheriff steady raking in a whale ton of money, but hey, they taking the golden girls up out your library. Feel like y'all ain't fucking hearing me. Have I said it wrong? Defund the CIA and the cops, the Pentagon. I don't give a fuck. Make them raise their money with the telethon. The racism that makes them sick is set in stone, so send them off. Spend $1 billion on keeping up people houses showered in allowance in a pouch and all our kitchen fridges stocked. And you won't have to spend it, I'm keeping them prison locked. I really don't understand what makes this decision hard. The idea of abolition's existed a long time, since before the founding fathers penned the documents. Ever since they brought us to this continent, a long line of thinkers wanted it, wanting black thought for it, watching bombs fly for the neighbors, picking cotton fields and all, but still we sit on trial, slave catchers giving badges, prisons built all the time. Envision if we prioritize strong ties to the neighborhood, so that they stable to stop crime. That's the mission of abolition. It's been this for a minute. In this business for independence, we finna march right with our allies on the ballot, in the alleys with the power of the people. We will finally see freedom for our kind. And so in honor of Brianna, cause they shot her in the sleep, and in honor of Eric Garner, he's carotid in the squeeze, and in honor of Rashad, because he'll never push his daughter on the swing again, cause he was in his car and fell asleep. And in honor of Andres Guardado, martyred in the street, we are organizing, agitating, starting to believe that it might take another winter, another autumn, another spring, but no matter how long it takes, we will abolish the police. If being radical is grasping from the rules, that's just what I'll do, that's just what I'll do. If being radical,
I can remember seeing the slogan "Defund the Police," which happened exactly when it should have happened, because it meant that we were able to enact a kind of rupture with the past strategies that have always been focused only on prosecuting the individual police officer, find the bad apples and remove them. So I think that now we are confronted with real possibilities of beginning to shrink the power of the police. The whole notion of police abolition has come to the fore. I mean, it's interesting because I don't think we would have ever imagined it happening this way.
Welcome in, everybody. Hey, look, my closed captions are working. I usually like to test them out before the stream starts, but I didn't have time. I didn't have time to do a lot of things today before stream starts. You can see I've got some stubble. I'm not really a big fan of streaming with stubble, but you know, hard times and whatnot. But it's good to be here. It's good to see you all. Thank you, everybody that's here. Got some cool stuff to talk about today. And by cool, I mean it. Hopefully, some people will find it upsetting. What I mean by that is I want to start tapping into some of the absurd. To help all of us understand that the way that we understand the world is fundamentally flawed, fundamentally wrong. We're going to have to get uncomfortable before we're doing wrong. What kind of mistakes and reason that we're making, and how those mistakes and reason are preventing us from actualizing real truth. Welcome in, Jane. Good to see you. And it's good to see you, Kanamatara, as well. You were the first in. Notice you like my Disposability is Counter-Revolutionary article. I haven't had a chance to read it all. I just now finally got around to getting back on Substack to find it. So I pulled it up so that I could take a look at it, but I haven't actually had a chance to read it yet. This last week ended up being a lot busier than I expected. With I had a lot of school stuff out of the way, and I was talking about that on my last stream. Am getting some pretty terrible lag. It's not even cloudy. The wind isn't blowing. But it is pretty terrible already. I might try and swap over. Last time it worked and didn't ruin anything, so I think I'm gonna try and switch internet connections again. Dot dot dot. Is it? Well, it is getting a lot better. I should probably still just, rather than waiting for it to get bad, let's just go ahead and switch it over right now. All right, fingers crossed that we don't have any complications and that we just connect right on over, and then Twitch doesn't notice any problems and YouTube doesn't notice any problems, and rather than waiting for it to get bad, let's just go ahead and switch it over right now. All right, fingers crossed that we don't have any complications and that we just connect right on over, and then Twitch doesn't notice any problems and YouTube doesn't notice any problems, and the restreamer doesn't notice that it was a successful connection. That tab was supposed to have been muted. I muted that tab. I was there. I was there when I muted that tab. Oh, I think I might have closed it after I muted it and then opened a new one. No, it looks like we're good. Looks like we're reconnected, and yeah, there you go. welcome back in. Jane and Kaimatara. Welcome back in, everybody. Good, looks good, and it's a much better connection. I had talked about remembering. Funny. I had talked about remembering to start doing that connection automatically before stream, and I'd also talked about changing the weekly tasks last stream, and I still didn't even look at any of that yet. Y'all, I've just got too much stuff on my plate. And more all the time. It's like the reason why I was late today is because I was finishing up schoolwork this morning, and then I spent the rest of the morning getting ready for stream until about 30 minutes ago. And then I was like, okay, everything's ready, let's go. And then I remembered that the dogs haven't been out. My roommates aren't home today. One of them was working a double, and the other one's with their mom in town. And so, like, if I don't take the dogs out, that's going to be a problem sooner rather than later. I can get started streaming now, but then I'm going to have to stop streaming in an hour, if not sooner anyway. Oh, man, I might have to go stop stream so I can shave. Ugh. They will just stop looking at me. Put something on. I might not be able to look at myself at all today in today's stream. But yeah. So just one more thing popping up. One more thing to do. All the time. It's just one more thing, all the time. Every day. But we're getting there. And that's something that I'm trying to remember. A few streams ago, I was talking about how I was kind of stressing myself out a little bit too much. And I'm trying to work out a better balance, like work-life balance. And the difficult thing to remember that's been hard for me to remember is that regardless of how much stuff is here ahead of me, regardless of how big this list is, I need to remember that there's a list behind me of stuff that I've done, right? And to keep this in context and to keep in mind that I am accomplishing things and that I shouldn't feel, because what happens is I feel like I need to get this stuff done. And it's all important stuff. It's all time sensitive things. So I want the stuff done. And I obsess over the getting done, and I don't appreciate. I don't take the time to appreciate what I have done, to thank myself for getting the things done, for being productive, and for accomplishing. So I don't spend enough time being real about what I'm accomplishing. So it always seems like I need to do more. I think, if that makes sense, that's kind of the situation I feel like I'm in, where I have a tendency to push myself awfully hard, because there's so much that I want to do. There's still so much that I haven't been able to get to with regard to the Discord. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, I think, is going to address some of the things in the Discord. So I'll probably speak directly to some of those, some of the things that I have in mind to respond to directly. I just haven't had the time to sit down and write any kind of response in Discord. So maybe I'll put it here in the stream and then just take some clips and throw some clips in there. Yeah, maybe, we'll see. So just be on my spot side, but Twitch isn't loading the video, only the comments. Okay, so it's good on YouTube, but not on Twitch. Twitch is a little bit wonky sometimes. And it might not be recording the stream. That's one of the things that irritates me the most. Yeah, you're right. It shows me as live, but it doesn't show me as really live, because otherwise I'd be looking at me. Oh, there we go. Otherwise I'd be looking at me. Okay. Thank you, Jane. Yeah, and I'm looking at it now. I see me on the Twitch as well. You might just have to reload it. Kind of Matara. Good. All right, so on today's agenda, I want to talk about faith and worship as biopower. So let me set this up. What has inspired the topic for today's video is a comment that one of my students made in class on Tuesday. Yeah. Was it on Tuesday or was it last week? It was last week. Not this week, not Tuesday as in a few days ago, but Tuesday last week. So we were talking about the importance of truth. Actually, this has to do with the conversation we've been having on stream. 2 streams ago, I just got a clip. This morning I made a clip of me talking about my pragmatism, that it matters more what we do with truth than it does how we got to the truth that we have. And that's something that I think is really very important, really very powerful. That understanding the origins of truth matter. Getting to the bottom of truth has value. Not nearly the value that we should ascribe to what we do with truth. And we also need to come to terms with the fact that truth and reality don't always cohere, nor do they have to. Knowledge, truth, there's quite a few things. Hold on. Juggling too many things in my head and I don't want to lose any of them. Excuse me. Truth, knowledge, and pathos. Okay, make sure I don't forget about this. So, right, what we do with the truth matters more than how we got to the truth. Right. Okay. Back to my student's comment. So that's what we were talking about. It was one of the things that we've been talking about on stream. In class, I was talking about frameworks. How rationalist frameworks, right? We're finally in the point of the semester where I've taught the rationalist frameworks for ethics, right? We've gone over utilitarianism, deontology, and the other various rationalist frameworks. And now we're turning over to Aristotelian virtue ethics and other non-rational frameworks for understanding ethics and morality. And the student was kind of tripped up over the importance of doing the Kantian test of pure reason so that we can get an answer that is concretely without bias and without external contingencies. Like that's the goal of Kantian deontology, is that we have the categorical imperative, we plug our maxim into the categorical imperative. This is a test of pure reason, which means that at the end of the categorical imperative, if you can plug the action in and it comes out the other side, paradox free, that's an action you can do. And you can know this with the same kind of surety that you know that a mathematical problem is correct, right? You know that when you've got the correct sum, because what's on one side of the equals sign is equal to what's on the other side of the equal sign, right? There's our mechanisms that we can do with math to know that our math is correct. Immanuel Kant thinks that he has done the same kind of thing with morality. And the student was like, okay, well, what about people that have truths, or that believe truths that aren't real? And the student used the example of people in North Korea who hold the belief that their emperor is actually some kind of deity or some kind of being worthy of worship. This particular student is Christian, and I believe that there's some religious conflict there where they look at what other people are doing. It affronts them and their sensibilities because they see this as idolatry, right? Worshipping some other being other than God, right? So the student, who is a Christian, looks at what North Koreans do, or how North Koreans think and what North Koreans believe, and looks at them and goes, those people are making a mistake in reason. And I said, okay, no, you're completely missing the point of what we're doing, morally speaking, and you're missing the point of why we find value at looking at other people's moral behaviors to evaluate them. We don't take the time in ethics to examine what others do so that we can look at how wrong and silly they are and feel superior. That's not why we engage with ethics. If you believe there are people out there in the world and those people you believe are making mistakes in reason, the lesson there is for you to look at those relationships to see what ways in which you are making those kinds of errors in your own beliefs, right? And so it was a very valuable teaching moment for the student, for the class, for us to all together go, we don't point fingers at other people because we believe they're mistaken. If you believe that those people are making mistakes in reason, then what you ought to do is reflect on your own beliefs and your own mechanisms of reason to see if you are making the same kinds of rational errors you believe other people might be making about their conception of reality. Hey, welcome in, Nova Rider. Good to see you. Well, it's awful and getting awfuler every day. but welcome in. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Right. So, but this got me thinking. The conversation that we had in the classroom with the student about North Korea and their beliefs got me thinking. About how analogous that is for all of our absurd ideas about the world. Now, just real quick, I don't think that people in North Korea are absurd for holding any beliefs at all. Any more, let me qualify this properly, any more absurd than I am for holding the kind of beliefs that I hold, that I recognize as absurd, or try to, right? I must live my life with these absurd ideas that I believe are absurd. But if I don't believe and go along with the beliefs of these ideas, I can't live in capitalism, right? I don't think that rent is a coherent idea. I don't believe that land is the kind of thing that can be owned. But I must act as though I do. I am forced by the system in which I find myself to pretend to go along with a narrative that I believe is not true. And I'm forced to do this in a way that represents that truth. It forces me to virtue signal belief in the things I don't believe in. Very good series about North Korean beliefs and story on Disney Plus, but I'm not American region Disney Plus. Interesting. I don't know that I have Disney anymore right now. It recently came up when we were talking about it, and the potential that maybe we should cancel it. And then my roommates were like, I don't think that we have Disney Plus. And I was like, oh, okay, well, then it doesn't matter. But that's worth checking out. Anything that gives you a good idea, especially if it's an honest, something honest. There was a special that I was watching. No, I can't remember. I can't remember the details, so I'm going to stop trying to mutter about it. No, I can't remember the details. Anyways, this got me thinking about biopower in general. And I believe that it's fair to say that we can look at the definition of worship and without knowing what all of your definitions of worship are. In fact, if you could, anybody that's here, please, if it would be helpful if you could put into chat what you think the word worship means, right? What kind of definition do you give to the idea of worship? And while you all are thinking about that and typing something into chat, I believe that there's value in taking that definition, whatever it is that you all are about to put into chat, and following it to its next logical conclusion. And that is to understand or to investigate. The next logical step would be to investigate how it is that we all engage in the process and practice of worship all the time, with all of our time. So I would argue that with every waking moment of your life, you are worshiping. Every instant that you are alive and awake and doing things with your time, what you are doing is engaging in worship. Every time, all day, every day. Worship to me is a high amount of uncritical reverence in something or someone. Yes, right, yes, I love that definition. And I believe it 100% applies to everything that I said, that all of us, all the time, with all of our waking moments, with all of our time and energy and effort, we are spending time in worship. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if we recall Hannah Arendt's three conditions of human existence, the three conditions of human existence: work, labor, vita activa, right? When what we were talking about is labor is what we do to survive, right? So how we feed ourselves and how we clothe ourselves as individuals, but also as a society. Work is that which we produce, which persists after which our mortal lives have ended. So the institutions and the ideas which become mainstays in culture and society, like governments and laws and courts and libraries, and that we have these institutions and people go to these institutions and do work to maintain these institutions. That's labor and work, right? So we've got these two categories, and vita activa is the living. It's what we do when we're not engaged in work and labor, but we are still interacting with others in the world around us. And this is the formation of political bodies. Is the most important thing that goes on in vita activa. There's lots of things that happen in vita activa. Great question, Jane. Worship would fall into vita activa, Jane asks. Yes, but also is a part of work. So, because the religions, well, it still works. Whether or not we're talking about a religion or talking about this broader conception of worship that I'm trying to tap into. In both ways, it's still going to be part of work, the establishment of institutions which persist after we're gone, but it is also vita activa, right? So, especially for people who integrate it into their everyday lives, people that pray before their meals, or people that pray when in the morning, or people that pray before bed, or people that have these kinds of rituals or routines where the religion is incorporated into their everyday life. If you stop twice a day and face east, to demonstrate your worship, that's incorporating it into the vita activa. So that is both work and the vita activa. That's over here, vita activa. But the most important, there's lots of stuff that goes on in vita activa, but the most important thing is the establishment of political bodies. And by that, I mean the creation of rights. When we engage in living with each other, our living out within the space of others around us, we are forging out the rights and dignities that persons get with our activity, right? With how we live our lives, with the way that we respect each other, with the way that we acknowledge each other. Right, that trying to think of, there's such a long way to go, and there's so many steps to get there, and I'm not sure. I keep taking steps, and then I'm like, okay, now what? Now what? Right. So we're before we go much further, we've got this. Worship would fall in. I thought that was. I found Trump's favorite Netflix series on how to become a tyrant 101. Wait. What do you mean, Nova Writer? I didn't catch that before. I found Trump's favorite Netflix series on how to become a tyrant. Is that a joke, or is there actually some show on how to become a tyrant? Or I know the joke isn't funny if you have to explain it, but I don't get it. Believe worship is alienation. It is a series on Netflix. Okay, I'll have to check it out. Thanks for that, for letting me know, Nova, and thanks for the quick response. I appreciate that. You're awesome. I believe worship is alienation. Kaya Matara says, I like to think that to truly be closer to a thing is not to worship it, but abolish differentials. So, for example, us Maori have the king movement. However, when it was established, absolutely none of the chiefs who were offered the mantle wanted it because they knew that it would create alienation from their people. To abolish capitalism is to abolish the work, not revere them, for example. Oh, abolish the worker, not to revere them. Right, that's a good point. And that's a point of capitalism, or of communism, that I sometimes don't think to focus on. I do get a little bit caught up in the idea of putting workers on a pedestal, right? Rather than the correct thing, which is to abolish work. Actually, to make our workplaces the places in which we live with each other in comfortable ways that don't require exploitation or alienation. Right, we transform what we now know as work into something else. So we abolish the worker, we abolish the work. Now we just live together. I think is more on point for sure. So good, actually. Then it how do we get there now? From that conception, actually, with that in mind, with that in mind, with that in mind, I would like to introduce an Aristotelian concept of the ambivalence of values that we attribute to certain kinds of spectrums. Okay. So give an example. When we're talking about Aristotelian ethics, the goal of Aristotelian ethics is to find the golden mean. When you are in an ethical situation, or when you have to find justness, or right, when you're trying to resolve moral conflicts, what Aristotle recommends is that you imagine the worst possible consequence, and imagine the action that you would need to get to that consequence, right? And then you imagine whatever the opposite of that is. And Aristotle supposes that exact opposite will probably also not be a good thing. this extreme that you've imagined is the worst possible outcome, and then the exact opposite is probably not the best possible outcome, but another too far, right? And we want to identify the limits of that which is the worst thing that we could do, so that we can whittle away things that we know we can exclude whole categories of actions, but by removing these and moving as far away from those extremes as we can. So an example is lying. Aristotle does not say that you should not lie. That there are situations in which it might be good or beneficial or fit the situation for you to not be entirely truthful or to withhold some information, right? But that doesn't mean that you cook up a big whopper, right? If being completely honest is missing the mark, and being completely dishonest is going to miss the mark, and you're going to be unbelievable or whatever, right? Then something somewhere in between is going to be your golden mean. You'll want to give some of the truth, but maybe withhold some of the truth. There's some kind of balance. Well, it's not moral relativism. So, but you're not off base for asking that question. So, good. Let's take a minute and unpack this a little bit further. Good. With utilitarianism and deontology, these rationalistic frameworks, they presuppose that there is some truth to the world about morality out there, and that there are frameworks that we can use to identify what that truth is. Aristotelian virtue ethics does not presuppose that there is a truth to be had out there in the universe, and does not suppose that there are any frameworks that one can use to find truth, right? So Aristotelian virtue ethics is a complete rejection of the formal premises of rationalist theories. Rationalist theories are invented specifically to overcome problems of moral relativism, right? So that's why those rationalist frameworks were invented in the first place. Because these thinkers thought that Aristotle was a moral relativist, which I don't think that he was. He, though, is and isn't. It's more complicated than that, which is why it takes some unpacking, and which is why this is not an incorrect supposition. It's absolutely the right way to think about it, but there's a caveat to it. Aristotle doesn't believe that there's not a right answer for you. But that it's not a relativist answer because of you. That there is a truth, there's a justness which exists in the situation itself. That justness can only be interpreted relationally. So, it is a kind of moral relativism, not a rejection of, but it's in between. I teach ethics, so you think I'd be a little bit easier, a little bit more adept at explaining this by now. So it's a little bit in between. It's anti-absolutist. So it's closer to relativism than most other moral theories, but it's not so close to relativism as, say, ethical egoism. With ethical egoism, the acting agent does whatever is in the acting agent's best interest. And that is nearly a purely relativistic moral framework, right? Whatever it is that you would rather, that's what you do. And Aristotelian virtue ethics is not that. It's not saying that you just get to decide what's right and wrong or what's just in a situation. There is a right thing to do for you. But what Aristotle is going to say is that is a truth which is inaccessible to everyone else. That doesn't mean that the ethics is relativistic itself. It means that ethics is always relational. And that distinction's hard. And I hope that I'm conveying that reasonably well. Because a relativist, no, that's not how I want to explain this. Because Right. Okay, so the assumption is that there is truth to right, okay. So let me recant. Let me backpedal a little bit. Actually, and I should have been more clear about this. So when I teach Aristotelian virtue ethics, I teach it as though it's moral relativism, basically. I go through the process of explaining to the students how it's not ethical relativism and how it avoids the problems of the rationalist frameworks. But it's still, that's it. By the criteria of rational thinking, Aristotelian virtue ethics is moral relativism. Within the framework of virtue ethics is not moral relativism. That's the way to explain it. From the perspective of the rationalist frameworks, Aristotelian virtue ethics is ethical relativism. But from the perspective of virtue ethics, within that framework, it doesn't see itself as ethical relativism. It sees subjective as necessary for understanding morality. So the subjective is necessary. Immanuel Kant supposes that you can abstract out the ideas, right? You've got a moral situation here. You take the pieces of the moral situation and you abstract them up into the realm of pure reason, and then you use the categorical imperative in a test of pure reason to arrange those things in ways that are either perfectly reasonable or form a paradox. Which Aristotle would have found completely incoherent, which other indigenous philosophies, African ethics, and in the North American Turtle Island indigenous ethics, those viewpoints find abstraction, moral abstraction, but that's because I was jumping into onto the baggage that's usually associated with ethical relativism as something which doesn't help us solve problems. And that's from the perspective of relativistic or of rationalist frameworks. You can't trust ethical relativism, right? That they say that it's not possible to do it, or that if you're doing that, you're just picking what you'd rather. And that's not what Aristotle's on about at all. Right. So, but if we take this concept of lying, right, where we've got, if we're just trying to decide how honest to be, we can be too honest or we can be too deceitful. We want to have something here in the middle. Students don't often have a hard time understanding honesty in this way, but they have a real hard time understanding concepts like love in this kind of way, right? Because what Aristotle is going to go on to say about things that we associate as being virtuous, when we identify a virtue in the world, Aristotle says we need to be very, very cautious about how we use and how we think about this virtue. Because honesty is a virtue, but you can have too much of it or too little of it, right? You can have an excess or deficiency. And when students encounter this idea with regard to love, they think to themselves, well, there's no such thing as loving too much. But there is. You can love too far. You can give too much of yourself. You can become a doormat because you're trying to please others. Or you can enable codependency, or you can enable dangerous chemical habits. You can do more damage to the people that you love because of how you love them, right? That's a reality that we need to understand about all of our virtues, all of the things that we look to think that this is a good thing. This is a good, healthy thing, and we should have more of this. Aristotle's going to go, there's always limits. And when we understand the relationships that we have to each other in this kind of way, where there's a spectrum, and along that spectrum, there's going to be a deficiency and an excess, right? When we have relationships with things in the world, and those relationships are on this kind of spectrum, we have to understand that there's a right kind of balance. And I'm going a very long way about trying to respond to Kayamatara's definition of worship, where they say alienation. So I think that rather than trying to push back against this idea that Kiyomatara is bringing up in chat about alienation, I think that there is, in the same way that we can, well, let me think about it this. Let me try to explain it this way. Right? When we love somebody to excess, it's arguable that along that spectrum we've crossed over into something else. It's still the same relationship. It's still born of the same thing. But because it has passed that threshold and gone too far, it's now not the thing it is. The love has become love. It doesn't cease to become love, but it now also takes on a new character that isn't love, that's harm, that's damage, that's abuse, it doesn't become divorced from the love. It just now becomes something different. What I'm trying to get to is if we've got alienation on one side and some kind of whatever the opposite of that is, what I'm trying to say is that this isn't necessarily good. This isn't necessarily freedom. That what we need to find is actually some kind of balance. And this has to do with, let me make sure I'm not getting behind on chat. Okay. Yes, Aristotle's always trying to find a happy medium. And it's not always a perfect in the middle. Sometimes it's the middle's over here, or the golden mean. It's the perfect balance for the situation, right? If the situation is an equation, what you do, or rather what you are, that's a better way to think about it. If the moral situation you find yourself is an equation, a mathematical equation, what you are is also a mathematical equation that cancels out for some kind of balance, right? If we want the same things on either side of the equal sign, that's, for Aristotle, that's justice or justness, when there's a balance of the goods and services, or of the happiness, or whatever it is that we're trying to equal out and balance so that everybody is fair, or everybody feels fair. Not always equal is the right thing either. Aristotelian virtue ethics is a little bit more complicated. It seems so simple. When you know it, when you understand it, it's really very simple, but it involves lots of complexities. Like an even distribution's not always the fair distribution, right? Sometimes it's more fair for things to be unequal. And we need to be mindful of those kinds of things, because if we think of equality as some kind of virtue, well, that can betray us too, right? And that's where I'm trying to get to in the response to Kaya Matara, is that there's I believe a balance. It's about maintaining kind of balance. We shouldn't be alienated from each other, and we shouldn't be alienated from our work. We shouldn't be alienated from the things that make us community. But we also shouldn't be prepared to give up the things that make us us, that give us our discreteness, right? Right. We don't give ourselves up to a community to be a part of the community. It requires some kind of balance. It's like dialectics in that sense of complexity. Yes. Well, and that's Aristotelian virtue ethics was just 1,500 years before its time. So far before its time. And as a quick aside, we'll do a quick aside about this. One of the biggest problems that Aristotelian virtue ethics has as a philosophy is the way that it was widely accepted as just true, rather than if you think about, right, if you think about what we consider the birth of philosophy. The birth of philosophy is the relationship between Socrates and Plato, and there are lots of other famous people too in this time, in this relationship with Socrates and Plato, and the way that they exchanged their ideas, and the way that Aristotle had all of that as a foundation to come into, to contrast with all of those differing opinions, right? So we get this really creative process that gives us a lot of really valuable insight into understanding the world. But after Aristotle, people stop engaging with the ideas as ideas to be engaged with. It's taught now as truth. It's taught as science. It's taught as, well, this is historically what came before you, so now you have to learn this and recreate this. And for about 1,000 years, it ruined Aristotelian philosophy. For about 1,000 years, ruined all other philosophy, because people just stopped doing it and started just believing Aristotle was right about everything. Funny aside there, Aristotle was way before his time. But part of the reason why he was before his time is because people still didn't understand that rather than just accepting truth, you're supposed to engage with the ideas. Right? You're supposed to dialectically engage with the content, right? Fucking... That's the point of dialectics, is engaging with it. But yeah. Yeah, the irony turning philosophy into a dogma when philosophy must reject dogma. That's how you do philosophy. Right? Balancing collectivism and individualism is the question. Yes. And so yes, Jane, for Aristotle, this is something that I've talked about a little bit before, where Aristotle would have had problems with the idea that an individual can do something to benefit themselves at the expense of culture and society, the society in which they live. Because if this person disadvantages other people or disadvantages the society in which they live for their own personal gain, they are doing themselves disservice because they live in that society, right? And you get that kind of idea. The balancing of collectivism and individualism is kind of an implied thing in Aristotelian virtue ethics that students have a hard time understanding, oftentimes, because when we talk about the rationalistic frameworks, those rationalistic frameworks presuppose Mills's harm principle, right? This antagonistic relationship between the state and the individual, right? Not that states are made up of lots of individuals who are working together towards some kind of collective good, like Aristotle believed in Aristotle's time. Now, whether or not Aristotle was correct about societies actually being that way at that time and not being ruled by kings and tyrants and plutarchs and whatever else, which was actually historically the case. But Aristotle understood societies to be collections of individuals who are working together towards some kind of common or collective good. That's not how we think of culture and society today, and that's not how we think of culture and society since John Stuart Mill. A little bit before him, obviously, but at that time, and from that time, we have a necessarily antagonistic relationship. State and the individual are at odds, necessarily. The relationship is is one that when the state gets more power, the individual loses. When the individual gets more power, the state loses. And there's all of the conversations that John Locke have. Who's the one before John Locke? Oh, Hobbes, right? Hobbes, John Locke, Rene Descartes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They're all having this conversation about how do we balance the interests of the individual and the state, presupposing these things are necessarily antagonistic. Whereas in Aristotle's time, it was just assumed that those things were cooperative. And the relationship of the individual and the state is always cooperative. I want to do good for my community. I want my state to be strong and to be powerful and to be successful, because my state is how I get rights and how I achieve good for myself in my own life. We don't have that relationship anymore, right? If we want to contrast this, we were talking about this a few streams ago, right? There is reason for people to worship the sun. There's reason for people to worship trees. There's reason for people to worship water. These things give us life. We have no reason to worship people. We have no reason to worship some sky daddy. We have no reason to worship volcanoes that we are supposed to sacrifice virgins to, right? Those kinds of ideas are completely irrational and completely absurd. In contrast to us having reverence and appreciation for the nature around us, which ensures our survival, right? That's reasonable. Having those kinds of belief systems makes some kind of sense as something that we would pass down to our progeny and to incorporate into our culture and society and to the institutions which maintain them over time past our own death. I'm a nature worshiper, I guess. I'm also kind of a nature worshiper, especially in the broader context. So thank you, Jane, for reminding me of the whole point of what I was supposed to be talking about today. Because the broader context is expanding this understanding of well, how it is that we spend our time. Because we do devote our time to things that we believe are valuable. And I think that there is, and I said this is going to be kind of uncomfortable, right? In this the way that I'm framing and phrasing this, especially for those of you who are not religious and who are not spiritual, or who are not Christian, I guess, specifically, how we spend our time is a representation of that which we worship. So, there's going to be some nuance to what I mean with this, right? So when I have worked for 6 to 8 hours at my job, right? That's me worshiping money, right? I'm worshiping money, but I work at an education institution, right? So I'm also participating in the institution of academia in general. I'm also participating in the institution of educating young minds, or those minds that want to learn. I'm participating in the institution of rigorous intellectual discourse, right? These are all ways that I'm engaged in worship when I show up to do my job. When I'm done with my job and I'm trying to relax by playing Genshin, right? I'm not worshiping the video game. That would be a mistake, right? But But I am worshiping this this idea of video game culture, right? Or gamer culture, or right, there is this idea that that enough of humans care about that we have whole gaming industries, right? Where people dedicate their time and energy and their jobs to creating this thing, this kind of artistic expression. And I'm participating in that, right? But I'm also participating in my own self-worship, because I deserve leisure too, right? Taking care of myself is a form of self-worship. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm doing something else. And what I'm doing with my time, how I devote my time, is a part of this is the interpellation, right? Part of the recreation of society. What it is that you do with your time and energy in a day creates the world for you tomorrow. It literally determines your own material conditions. And the material conditions that you have right now to do those things with are all determined by the material conditions that you had yesterday that you did things with. And what you did with them determined how they've changed and what you can do with them today now. Yes, philosophy is a form of worship, right? Right, you heard it here. Philosophy is a form of worship. And that's if we okay. And here's where we're going with this, right? And the very first thing that I began with the stream, I was talking about how we are all engaging in absurd ideas all the time with our time and energy. I am perpetuating ideologies and beliefs that I know as falsehoods. I do that every day by paying rent and by going to places to shop and by driving my vehicle and by engaging in these things. When I drive, right? And think about the material, right? Because we haven't started to talk about the material consequences of these really fully. But when I drive to some place, I value what I demonstrate by driving to a place is that my time is more valuable than the air that I pollute with my machine that pollutes the air to get me there faster. That's a reality that we fetishize. I can't believe I forgot to I didn't even think to include this whole idea of fetishization. Okay, so it's often when people are talking about fetishes or fetishization, they're talking about something sexual. But the word fetishization, it's a little bit more complicated. Let me actually look it up. Let me get the definition of fetishization. No. That's not the original definition of it. Okay. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. So I can't find the original definition. I'll have to look that up later. So it has to do with mysticization. So when people before we had science and before we had invented religion, there were states of affairs in the world, and people didn't understand those states of affairs in the world, and so they attributed mystical forces. They came up with mystical, supernatural explanations so that we would have some kind of reason for these things happening. We didn't understand how to come to terms with these, so we invented some explanation for them. So the creation of religion in the first place is a form of fetishization. There's this thing, we know it's a real thing. We know that it's real because the material reality of it is incontrovertible. But we can't comprehend what it is or how it is or why it is. But we need to use it. We need to understand this in a practical way in our everyday lives. So we're going to come up with a useful truth for understanding this thing that we don't understand. And to make this more real life for you, you fetishize the internet. You fetishize technology, right? You don't know how your phone works. If you had to reprogram your phone, you'd probably be screwed. But you do know how your phone works, right? And you create a series of explanations for how you can input the things into your phone, and the phone does the thing that you want it to do. Right? You can make the phone produce the right kinds of effects, even though you don't understand the magic that's going on. You can connect to the internet and talk to other people around the world. You may not understand the nuances of how it works, but you navigate those systems nonetheless. And whatever truths that you invent that you have to make up to make sense of how to use those tools in productive ways, despite the fact that you don't actually understand how they work, that's a process of fetishization. That's what I'm getting on about. Is the way that we invent ways of explaining to ourselves how things work so that we can make them operate even when we don't understand how they work. Right? That's why would I start right, okay. Good. It's quite ironic when right-wingers claim that communism means everyone has to act the same, when actually it's the polar opposite. Absolutely. To abolish the worker isn't making you like every other worker because it necessarily abolishes sameness. By contrast, look at the workplace. Do you not see how workers have to dress and act the same way? Right, you have to perform. Welcome in, Trash No Answer. I saw that you came in a minute ago, and I've been jabbing. It's good to see you, Trash. I hope you're doing well. But by contrast, look at workplace. Do you not see how workers have to dress and act the same way? Argonian Bum. I was talking about them on the other day on stream, and they came up again today on stream. It's good. They were talking about this in their stream. They were watching something that had to do with American Psycho. And Argonian Bum was talking about how this person is able to hide in everybody's plain sight. And they're able to hide effectively in everybody's plain sight because the culture in which this serial killer is, everybody is the same. Everybody has to perform the same kind of rigmarole and wear the same kind of uniform and do the same kinds of things and have the same kind of cards and have, that their sameness erases them in a way that people can hide right in the plain sight, right? I hope to pollute the air to get places faster. This winter, I need to commune with nature, not in my state. Yeah, you need a place. You need a way to drive, huh? I definitely fetishize the internet. Religion is institutional. Yes, thank you, Jane. This is exactly perfectly right, and that's the difference. So one of the things that I'm trying to key us into to get us to understand is that all of us all the time are always engaged in different kinds of worship, always. And that worship is the dedication of our time and energy to recreate the things that we believe are worthy of worship. Video game culture, or our jobs, or teaching as an institution, yada yada yada. But what we recognize as worship is just a form of institutionalized worship. All the other things are also worship. And they're no less systematic than institutions. But institutions are things that we name specifically as things that people worship. And what part of the reason why I'm trying to use this language, well, hold on. Phone seldom does the thing I want it to. Oh, yeah, no worries. I get you, Trash Nomancer. Right. Part of the reason why I'm using this language, I've got multiple reasons. But one is that I would like us to be able to present this idea. I think that there's value in packaging this idea so that we can disseminate the idea that when people engage in politics, when they engage in the political rhetoric, when they engage when people are talking about electoralism, right? Even if what they're trying to do is materially productive, it can't be. They're engaging in worshiping things that aren't going to get us the right kinds of ends or the right kinds of solutions. And I think that there's value in being able to get other leftists to recognize that what they do, rather than in being engaged with the material conditions, that what leftists do is they engage in worship of ideology, where they sit around and they want to split hairs about this labor theory or about what this means or this kind of direct action, or fucking get out there and do it. That's where we need people to understand is that they're engaging in worship, and the worship is the act of saying. There we go. Right? That a lot of people on the left are engaged in inane worship of ideology, which doesn't get them anywhere, which doesn't improve anybody's material conditions, and doesn't have anything to do with actually accomplishing a revolution. And calling them out for worship is, I think, one of the best tactics. Rather than, because we talk about people being swept up in the ideology. Rather, this is something that comes up on this channel an awful lot. I love my chat. You guys are fantastic. Really great content comes out of this group. And that's one of the important things that comes up over and over again, is that people lose track of that they're supposed to be invested in the material conditions all the time, and they forget and instead spend their time up here in the realm of ideology, and it might help us and them. It might help us all to understand that how we spend our time is worship. It is devotion to that which we believe is worthy of recreation. What we do with our time signals to the universe that that's what we want more of. A theory, fetishism is not useful at this moment. No. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. I have a truck, good one too. Going to set it up for camping. Nice. Want to do the Black Canyon Valley, Burrow Creek, and Brenton, Arizona, and the Tucson and Quarterites shows. When are you gonna do that? Because that's not far from me. Those areas in Arizona, some of them anyway. Gem Hill and Lead Pipe Springs area in Mojave, California. Visit Monterey. Travel to see other friends. Okay, that's really awesome. Oh, thanks. Want to do Texas Springs. Spencer ID, Lakeview. Lots of hills to climb. Yeah, I'm a big fan of hills. So yeah, that's right. We're talking about nature worship. Well, that's yeah, right. I forgot that we were having that whole conversation about nature worship. I went off on a tangent and forgot about that. A lot of folk just working on the thought and not the action. I have been one. Did recently make a jewelry for charity. That's awesome. A beginning of February. Okay. Want to be up sometime. If you're gonna be in Tucson the beginning of February, I might also there's a music festival that goes on in Tucson that I might be interested in. It should be February. It was canceled last year, but they'll be doing it this year, supposedly. Feel as if I'm becoming more Marx pilled as I engage with these streams. Good. No. Well, it might. It's Gem and Jam. Have you heard, Chashnomancer, have you heard of Gem and Jam? There are techno artists that play. They usually have one night that's all EDM, drum and bass, all that kind of stuff. But Gem and Jam features lots of other kinds of music too. And it takes place at the same time as because there's a whole bunch of other rock and gem shows in the area. It's a huge deal, right? Gem and Jam, yeah, not gone. It's big. Gem and Jam is. I was talking about festivals in the 27 Club last night. Maddie has a TikTok recently that she put out where she was making fun of festivals because, I mean, most of them are just not worth it. I'm a big festival goer, but I generally like smaller festivals, things that are, $150 to $250 for 4 nights where you get lots of music, but it's not ridiculous. I'm not ever going to go to Burning Man. Zero interest in going to Burning Man or any of those other kinds of festivals. If there's 30,000-40,000 people there, I'm probably not interested. But Gem and Jam is kind of an exception. It's a bigger it's a kind of a big festival. The year I went, I think it was like 34,000 people attended that year, so it's big. Um, but it's not Burning Man big. And it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't too many people. That's probably about the biggest that I would go to, though. Been to Tucson show twice, just to do much more. You're a philosophy teacher. Do you give high marks on tests? Oh, that's good. Gemstone kids hang out there. Yeah, often have exceptional pocket collections for sale. Many of the established dealers, yes. Yeah, and that's so a lot of people will go to the Gem and Jam festival and they won't even buy a ticket to get into the music festival. The only reason why they've come is to walk around the parking lot, because there's a whole bunch of people that just have buckets and buckets of rocks and gems and all kinds of cool stuff that they just, they're sitting on the back of their truck. And a lot of times they'll sell them, but really they like to trade. A lot of these rock collectors and gem collectors are much more interested in swaps. So it's a good time. I have a good time, and I was kind of thinking, I was on the fence of whether I was going to go to Gem and Jam this year. But if you're going to be in the area, it would really be cool to meet up and hang out. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So I'll keep in touch with you. We'll talk about it between now and then. February's a long way away still. We'll miss Electric Park. That was so much cheap rock in one place. I'd heard that Electric Park was great budget show. Yeah, I never got a chance to check that one out. Right. Okay, good. Good. Yeah, we'll catch up on that later. But it's funny, Kayamatara. I'm a philosophy teacher and I'm an anarchist and a Marxist. And none of that is assigned reading for my course. I wouldn't say none. Actually, that's completely a lie. I have my students read Proudhon. When we get to rights discourse, that's and I don't actually have them read a lot of Proudhon. But they read a whole chapter out of What is Property, and that's basically what it is. Because we get into rights discourse. I talk about Hobbes and Locke, and then Rousseau, and then Max Stirner, and then after Max Stirner, I have Proudhon, right? So, trying to think if I have any other. Some people call Max an anarchist, and I think that's not really quite right at all. Right? That Max Stirner's an anarchist in the same way that Ann Combs are actually anarchists. That is paradoxically not at all. That is that they're to say that they're not. But it's getting the back and forth. This is a good time for me to chill. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to go with the stream for the rest of the stream. It's a good time for me to stop and ask for money if anybody feels like they can contribute to the stream. And Cap, thank you. And Caps. That is what I meant to say, Jane. Not Con. And Caps. Someone doesn't have a big enough ego, you just need to be sterner with them. That's a good one. I might actually steal that one and use that one in the classroom. That's a really good one. Next sterner is fucking hilarious. Yeah, if anybody can feel, I don't know. I've been feeling kind of conflicted about asking for money recently anyway. I'm having trouble keeping it with my stream schedule. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm trying really hard to keep up with the 2 times a week. I promise. I promise I'm trying really hard to keep up with twice a week. Schedule. I have to put school first and then, like, you know, groceries and bills and stuff. So, when those things interfere with stream has to get put on the back burner. But you know, I still feel bad about it because I'm also constantly talking about leaving Twitch. I don't like Twitch as a platform. I don't like Twitch as a company. If I'm looking for any excuse not to be here anymore. And so it, you know, I feel a little bit duplicitous sometimes when I'm like, subscribe to the channel. So if you can help me out financially, if you've got $2 or $3 that you can spare, just buy me a coffee. That's the best way to support me and to support the stream. Because then Jeff Bezos doesn't touch any of this money. Because I also don't like asking for money and then some of that money going to Jeff Bezos. Because Jeff Bezos is complicit in the genocide in Gaza that's going on and in starving people and exploiting people in third world countries that have precious metals. Oh yeah, here's something I should bring up. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, take your time. I'm gonna be chilling here. I do want to take a look at some things. This is something that I've brought up a number of times on stream, and I keep talking about watching it, and I never get around to actually watching it. Slavoj Žižek had this video that released, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago now. Why I'm against both sides in the transgender debate. I thought that I would be really, really angry and frustrated and disappointed with Slavoj Žižek when I watched this, and I wasn't. I don't think that Slavoj Žižek is. Well, we'll talk about it. But I think and this also ties into what we're talking about today. So I think that we've done a really, really good job of getting through the main ideas, the overarching themes that I wanted to get to. There's still a number of things. I've got a whole list of things that I want to unpack about the things that we've talked about so far. But I think that now is a good time to go to this, and we'll use this as the starting point for starting another cycle, right? We want to go around this conversation over and over again a few times, and I think that this is a good starting point for continuing, right? So far as a start is a continuation, this is a good starting point. Usually suggest folks get a lander page. Yeah, I need to have a link tree or something. I will have one once I start going. Have all your links in general info, then put the links wherever possible on the other sites. Cross-linking going adds legitimacy to the algo. Okay, good for SEO. SEO. I don't know what SEO is. And allows for a centralized hub if anything gets disrupted. And that's the other thing that I'm kind of struggling with right now. Search engine optimization. Thank you. Is here's where I am. I'm trying to figure out if the reason why I'm still here on Twitch is only because I don't want what I have to be disrupted, right? Only because of the convenience, because I feel a certain way or some kind of attachment or some irrational clinging on to. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now, is if the reason why I'm still here on Twitch is a form of inappropriate worship, right? Actually, literally, quite to the point of today's stream. I'm trying to figure out if me being here on Twitch is a form of incorrect worship. So I think this is going to be a good place to get going. Let's see what Slavoj Žižek has to say about transgender identity.
Although I'm so sad I cannot afford a short introduction, improvisation, not to be able to go into this new conflict, transgender, cis, and so on, all that stuff, because the more I think about it, the more I am tempted to oppose both sides. That is to say, on the one hand, of course, those who think, I even don't know how to call it, I'm for theoretical reasons opposed to the term gender. I think in sex you have a certain antagonism which remains there. But okay, why do I oppose both sides? On the one hand, those who preach, like those who think sexual identity is basically biologically determined, I wonder if you noticed it, an obvious paradox, inconsistency. People who advocate that sex identity is biologically determined are terribly afraid of LGBT open education. You know, when in kindergarten and schools you are attentive to, you want to make to the small child visible, palpable, that there are other options, not just what appears to be his, her, its, their biological sex. But then, if they believe in biological, more or less, determinism, why are they so afraid of LGBT plus propaganda? I think their secret belief is that they can be easily denaturalized, which means that they really believe even too much that sex is a sexual construct, you know. And then you can like...
I want to pause for a moment here. Make sure everybody gets this argument, because I think that this is a really, really good point. Why would conservatives be so against us talking about transgenderism in schools if they didn't believe it was possible that there is more to gender than just the binary? Because if it was the case that gender was purely biologically, categorically a strict binary, it wouldn't fucking matter what we taught in class. Would it? If it was the case that gender is a biological reality, then what we think about it as a human construct is irrelevant. If it were the case that conservatives were correct, then they would have nothing to complain about. They have nothing to fear, nothing to fight against, nothing to be so upset about. No reason to clutch their pearls, no panties in a wad, nothing. Yet, if you were correct, conservatives about transgenderism, then all of your fears are useless and are a waste of your time and energy. But clearly, you don't actually believe that, because if you believe that, then you wouldn't be wasting your time. So I think that this paradox is really right on point. And Slavoj Žižek is really pointing out something useful. Now he's going to come back the other way. Is necessarily a non-binary social construct. Is necessarily. I would say that every word about this is essentially perfectly said. Yes. Is necessarily a non-binary social construct. Is necessarily, can't not be. And there's a number of ways that we can prove this, actually. Slavoj Žižek's given us one of those kinds of proofs that literally demonstrates there's a sublime kind of substance here to this. To this phrase. I love that gender is necessarily a non-binary social construct. That anybody believes it could be necessarily means it is. Unavoidably. And that is categorically, metaphysically a true statement about the state of affairs of those concepts and words, because of what those concepts and words mean and how we use them and how those things relate to people living their lives. It necessarily is the case. Yeah, right. Living the demonstration, living proof right here. Incontrovertible proof. But they're going to argue it against it anyways. But currently broke as a joke, so Tripp has some hurdles. Right on. And yeah, a force of will is, I don't know how much those are worth anymore, but I know that those are pretty valuable cards. It's still meta, right? That's one that stays in the meta, at least for extended, right? All right, but let's see what Slavoj Žižek has got to say about the other side of this coin.
Overturn it with, on the other hand, what I oppose on the opposite side, it's not, of course not, LGBT as such, is just, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe if you will be too bored with nature, we can go into a debate later in this direction. Like, I think the choice between, on the one hand, what appears as biological, sexual identity, and the term that is always used or regularly used, and I don't like it, is that you should be free to decide to declare what you feel. Sorry, but for me, my greatest reproach to a certain LGBT plus ideology, which is, we are free to choose, blah, blah, reconstruct ourselves, is that it makes it too easy. Too easy in the sense, in what sense? In the sense that many LGBT plus, some are very bright, people, they hate psychoanalysis. It's patriarchal, binary, all you want. But I think precisely the trans topic makes it clear how traumatic, inconsistent subjectivity is. Like, you can feel one thing, you are substantially another thing. Did you see, I forgot the title, there was a Belgian movie, fiction, but based on a real case, about a boy who wants to become a girl. And with great support from her colleagues, doctors, parents even, she does it, but it involves so many traumas. You know, So, okay, let's not get lost. We have nature to deal with. But my point is this one. Yes, I agree. Your sexual identity is a matter of, in some deep sense, of free choice. But the notion of freedom here is very radical. Let me mention a simple case. Let's say you are biologically, you appear as a man, you want to become whatever you want, let's say to simplify, a woman. But you know, this is not like going to a patisserie and say, sorry, till yesterday I was eating cheesecake, now I want strawberry cake. It's something very traumatic, which involves a lot of even physical suffering, surgery, traumas, and so on. So the freedom we are dealing here, it's not a simple freedom of choice, it's really something like unconscious choice. And I more and more think that the big contribution of Freud to theory of choice is that in our unconscious we are much more free than in our conscious self-awareness. The most radical choices, we experience them as necessity. The true choice is when you feel about something, I can't do it otherwise. Although it's my free choice. But radical freedom appears as fate, if you want. And all these things are so complicated. I don't know if you know it, something happened. It was a big trauma in my, as your beloved President X, maybe future Trump put it, shithole of a country, Slovenia. There was a really tragic hate. My wife knew that boy, girl. A young...
Oh, okay. I thought that I muted myself, but I forgot. Otherwise, I would have just been talking the whole time. So I put the CW in there because I was trying to give a content warning, because what Slavoj Žižek says right there in the middle of the video is well, the first time I heard it, I was mad about the words. When he talks about sure, gender is a social construct, we can create and recreate these ideas, but in some sense, he says, changing our gender is too easy for us to consider it something that's actually free. And it took, I had to watch it a second time for me to understand that I had misunderstood him in the first place. Because when he's saying that switching your gender is a choice, and that choice is too easy, it sounded to me like he was diminishing the reality of people who have body dysphoria or gender dysphoria, who make that decision, right? Who make that choice, and calling that choice easy, right? I'm like, but it's not. But it's not easy. It's in every way quite the opposite. And that is why what he's saying is that it's not actually a matter of choice, and it's not really a matter of freedom. In the full, or if it is a matter of freedom, it's much more complicated. It's much more complicated than simply one just makes a choice. And that's why he goes on to talk about the trauma, right? For you to accomplish the ends of the goal of your choice, you have to go through social, psychological, and sometimes physical bodily trauma to accomplish those ends. So to say that gender is just a construct that we can just flip like flipping a switch, no, And the people who are engaging in this kind of activity aren't free not to. That's the reality that we need to understand, is that people who feel compelled to undergo any kind of transition or to go through any kind of metamorphosis in themselves, that person doesn't really have a choice. Because if they did, they'd probably opt out. No, I mean, the idea that people take upon themselves to be disowned by their parents and to be abused by their communities and to find dating that much more complicated and to do all of these things on a whim, right? That's not choice. That's not choice. And to think of that mode of existence as choice is to completely misunderstand what choice and freedom are. I think. And I want to get back to the video and let Zizek finish his point, but I wanted to say a lot of things about that, and wanted to have an expanded conversation about that. Kamatara's back. Wasn't loading for me properly, so I said thank you very much. I very much appreciate your contribution. It should have. Oh no, I disabled Stream Elements. So if you send it through Streamlabs, good, perfect, thank you. That's the better way to do it. I really appreciate that, Kamatara. You're amazing, and I appreciate the support. We didn't get. I turned all of those things off, so I don't get a notification about it, but I appreciate it. I wouldn't view transition as suffering, or at least not as much as not transitioning. Not as much as not, right? And that's it. When the first time I watched this, I had so many emotions. I felt so much about it, because at first I was like, well, how is Slavoj Žižek gonna say that this is easy? That any of this is easy? And then he goes on and starts talking about all the traumas, and I'm like, well, I mean, are you saying that those traumas aren't worth it? Are you saying that those traumas aren't valuable? Are you saying that those what are you saying, Žižek? And then I had to watch it a second time, and then I was like, oh, okay, right, but that's it. Exactly your point there, Jane. But I wouldn't view transition as suffering, or at least not as much as not transitioning. At the end of the day, you don't really have a choice. Good, we're going to talk about Aristotle more and not having a choice, or acting for demand of the situation. Let me put that on my list. Not a choice, but it's almost not a choice. Anyways, we'll come back and deal with. Just making notes, so I don't want to come back. Don't want to forget. There's still lots of stuff to unpack. We've got so much more to unpack today. I'm Ira Kore. Concept for agender. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Good. Thank you for sharing, Kaimatara. To exist as that is to exist as an essence. To exist as that is to exist as an essence. As a way to understand, think of a tornado. A tornado has dust and wind, but the tornado is not dust and wind. The tornado is the essence, or the process of spinning. Interesting. Wouldn't have chosen to be a woman, though. No? Interesting, Curse Chaos. Hmm. Do you identify then as non-binary? Because that's, I mean, I have a hard time not projecting in a lot of ways when it comes to understanding things under the umbrella of gender nonconforming, right? It's a really big umbrella, and it for me anyway, it there are no. I see two archetypes. I've been given the two archetypes, and no, neither one work. Right? I to say that I identify as they them is not correct. Precisely. Right? But whatever it is I identify isn't a thing which is available. I'm given two choices, and those two choices, no. Right. So, something, I don't know, that's my experience of it, is just, it, almost a full rejection of, and not even a full rejection of the binary, though, I mean, that's inherently necessitated in it, because I believe gender's a spectrum, right? Not any number of mutually exclusive categories. That's the thing. I mean, even if you believe that, I mean, I don't know, you just can't. Now, I was about to try and come up with a way to try and justify some kind of cis insistence on cisness, but no. There are no distinct categories which exist in nature like that. There are no distinct categories in all of nature which exist that way. I mean, just no. I don't think I didn't have the choice to be a woman, but knowing how much suffering there would be, I wouldn't have chosen this. Oh, wow. No, and that's again, it's not a matter of freedom. If and this is I've got. Hold on, let me go get the dog to be quiet. There's nobody here. The dog just needs to figure out that nobody's here. I'll be right back. Never mind, somebody is here. So my roommate will be walking in, and they'll just tell the dog to be quiet. So I have a straight friend who talks about their straightness in this interesting way, where they have chosen to live their life as a celibate asexual person, even though they're married and in a relationship with somebody. That relationship isn't like that anymore, so they are now a celibate asexual person. But not by choice. They are heterosexual. They just dislike men. That's what they are attracted to. That's how their sexual attraction works. If they could be into women, they would be into women. They would have already gotten a divorce and be in a new relationship. But that's not how it works. She doesn't have a choice. She's hardwired a certain way. She could pretend, but pretending would be more work, and it wouldn't be free. Right? Living in the other way, right, is and I think that's what Slavoj Žižek is really trying to get on about, is that nothing about this is free. When it comes, it might be the case that there are more than two genders, and Slavoj Žižek isn't saying anything to the contrary. Rather, making the statement explicitly that it's not a matter of choice or freedom. People do what they need to do. People do what they must. They or act for demand of the situation. Let's go ahead and unpack this Aristotelian idea. Oh, hold on. But it so strange for anyone to choose to be a woman, and especially without further definitional standards, regardless of their organs. This seems like so much nicer. Just be a human with feelings and preferences. Right. Well, yes. A matter of practicality is acting for demand of the situation. Or prudence is another way that it's expressed, but also not really. So it's an Aristotelian concept that's for acting for demand of the situation. Is let's use the example that Aristotle uses. If you are a merchant and you are shipping goods across the Mediterranean, right? So you've gone somewhere and you picked up a bunch of goods and you're bringing them back to wherever you want to sell them. But there's a storm, and the storm is threatening to capsize the boat that you are using to transport your goods. Aristotle says, no sensible man throws goods away. But if doing so will secure his safety and the safety of his crew and the safety of his ship, that's what anyone would do, right? You can say that the shipmaster or the captain has a choice, right? They do. They can make the choice to not throw the goods overboard and let everybody die, right? And let the ship capsize and lose all the goods anyways. They have the ability, the freedom. They have the option to make that choice, but it's not really a choice. The situation demands that this is what you do, so this is what you do. A rational person does this. And it's not, it doesn't have to do with good or right. The situation just demands of you. And so Aristotle talks about there being freedom, right, to act within this situation, but also not really. And Slavoj Žižek is just taking this a step further. To say that in these kinds of situations where we see people who are undergoing literal traumas, who are engaging with, again, emotional, psychological, social, and sometimes physical traumas on purpose, right? When we see those people engaging in these kinds of activities, we should suppose that those are people who are acting for demand of the situation. Right? The alternative is for them to just give up and die. Like the ship captain not throwing the goods overboard, trans people can just give up. And some do. And sadly, that reality is what our society wants, is for those people to give up so that they cease to exist. Which is why your survival is radical. Which is why when you persist, your persistence is radical. Because you live in a system that's trying to kill you. So every day that you survive it, fantastic, good job. Way to be a revolutionary. Right? And I hope that helps some of you feel good about yourselves. And just the fact that you survive, that you are living right now, is a reason for all of us to celebrate. That's revolutionary. That's awesome. But it's also not, I don't know. I was gonna say something, and then I decided not to. Now I think I'm gonna say it anyway. Just keep in mind there's going to be a caveat, and I'm still not sure how I feel about what I'm gonna say. But it also means that people who Okay, I could say it this way. This also means that the people that I look up to, the others that survive in culture and society and have laid the groundwork for me to feel like I can do this, right? I idolize those people. I look up and respect those people. I have a lot of adoration for those people. And in the reality, or faced with the reality that these people are engaged in a kind of worship for their own sake and for their own benefit in a situation in which they are simply acting for demand of the situation, it makes their actions something that I should maybe treat differently than, I don't know, right? Existence is resistance, yes. You know what? I've said some words to it. I tried to articulate it. And I don't think I'm ready to articulate it beyond that. I don't think I've grappled with the concept I'm trying to grapple with nearly enough that I'm going to continue to try and throw words at it. I think I'm going to move on and talk about some of the. We're still going back full circle to bring everything back full circle. So in that endeavor, I'm going to put. We're going to watch the last 2 minutes or so of this Slavoj Žižek. I'm going to back it up here. No, back a little bit further, right? Because he has already talked about the conservative paradox, right? Already gotten that point out of the way. We are all on the same page about the conservative paradox. Conservatives don't have reason to be concerned about teaching gender ideology in school, because if it was the case that there was a biological basis for there being only two genders, then it wouldn't matter what we were teaching in school. That you wouldn't be able to coerce people into believing things about themselves wasn't real. So conservatives clearly understand that gender is a social construct, and that it is a matter of expression, and that we can express that in a variety of ways. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so concerned about us teaching gender ideology in schools. They wouldn't have anything to worry about, right? So we got that paradox out of the way. This is where he's flipping the coin the other way, and I just want everyone to be able to follow on that whole. I've explained it, hopefully well enough, but I'm going to let him re-articulate the point and then finish the point up with the rest of it, while I am using the restroom. So I'll be right back.
Please, we are free to choose, blah, blah, reconstruct ourselves, is that it makes it too easy. Too easy in the sense. In what sense? In the sense that no wonder many LGBT plus, some are very bright, people, they hate psychoanalysis. It's patriarchal, binary, all you want. But I think precisely the trans topic makes it clear how traumatic, inconsistent subjectivity is. Like, you can feel one thing, you are substantially another thing. Did you see, I forgot the title, there was a Belgian movie, fiction, but based on a real case, about a boy who wants to become a girl. And with great support from her colleagues, doctors, parents even, she does it, but it involves so many traumas, you know. So, okay, let's not get lost. We have nature to deal with, but my point is this one. Yes, I agree. Your sexual identity is a matter of, in some deep sense, of free choice. But the notion of freedom here is very radical. Let me mention a simple case. Let's say you are biologically, you appear as a man, you want to become whatever you want, let's say to simplify, a woman. But you know, this is not like going to a patisserie and say, sorry, till yesterday I was eating cheesecake, now I want strawberry cake. It's something very traumatic, which involves a lot of even physical suffering, surgery, traumas, and so on. So the freedom we are dealing here, it's not a simple freedom of choice, it's really something like unconscious choice. And I more and more think that the big contribution of Freud to theory of choice is that in our unconscious we are much more free than in our conscious self-awareness. The most radical...
This is something that I thought about pointing out the first go-round. This has to do with what I've referred to as Immanuel Kant's retreat into the citadel of pure reason. Ideologically, we can be the gods of our own universe. As long as we're just up here. Right? When it's necessary for us to leave the confines of that citadel, the ideas, the constructs, and the ideologies that we've developed here can't leave and come back with us into the regular world in the same kind of way. Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Choices, we experience them as necessity. The true choice is when you feel about something, I can't do it otherwise. Although it's my free choice. But radical freedom appears as fake, if you want. And all these things are so complicated. I don't know if you know it, something happened. It was a big trauma in my, as your beloved President X, maybe future Trump put it, shithole of a country, Slovenia. There was a really tragic hate. My wife knew that boy, girl. A young, already student, okay, early 20s. Boy successfully became a woman. He went through all the surgery, blah, blah, blah. No problems, parents accepted it, friends, blah, blah. Then something happened. On a certain day, she got official letter from city authorities where you are registered as a citizen that she is now officially a woman. She killed herself instantly. You see how apparently totally external thing, like how it's registered by the big other of state institution, ruined everything. So the reason I think Freud can still tell us a lot, Freud and today's Freudians, precisely about transgender identity. I think that they are the most free people, but they pay a price for it, great price. And that's where they need not our patronizing support, but how to put it? You know, when we have these polemics about how sexual identity should be playful, like today I'm gay, tomorrow I'm hetero, then I play another game and so on, isn't something, how should I put it, patronizingly humiliating in this? It somehow ignores the deep personal traumas, complexities, and even, I would have put it, the real profound suffering of changing your sexual identity. That's the problem. And I think, again, psychoanalysis has a role to play here. But enough of this. Let me begin. I want to...
And that's just an aside. Before Slavoj Žižek begins one of his classes, I think he was answering a question from a student, so it's just a short aside in the lecture. But there's a whole lot, right? There's a whole lot, and I'm going to share this too. For those of you who liked the video, who maybe want to watch it again, or maybe you didn't like the video and want to watch it again, or want to comment on it, or whatever else. Lots of interesting stuff. I think that sometimes when I listen to other philosophers, I try to think about their incomplete thoughts, because it happens to me constantly. When I begin a sentence, usually when I'm talking about something philosophical, when I begin a sentence, there are a number of different ways that sentence can go. And a lot of times I've not decided which way it's going to go when I start the sentence. And when I get to the end of the sentence, I have to decide now where we go to the next, right? And there are so many trains of thought that just get neglected and left by the wayside. And I think that there's a train of thought here that doesn't get fully articulated. That has to do with the recognition of the other. He was trying to make the point about the state, the person who had the successful operation, the gender reassignment surgery, and then when they got their ID, they unalived themselves as a response. Slavoj Žižek suggests, because of the recognition of the state or the recognition of the other. And I don't know that anecdote is a really good way to illustrate what he was trying to talk about, but I think that there is something meaningful and important there. This is, I brought this up, I can't remember if it was on the last stream or the stream before, where personally, I experienced this because so far as I know how, I try to tick the boxes of what they, them is, right? Even though I don't really have an archetype that I can look to, or anything, I try to present myself as not male, right? As I try to present myself as something other. But there's a matter of negotiation with the world around me, and I don't get to be master of that negotiation or that relationship. When I'm at the grocery store and other people see me at the grocery store, some of those people see me as a he, and they're gonna walk away from having seen me, and for them, there's a truth. They have a truth about me that I don't get to interfere with, or I don't get direct control over. So there's This has to do with the end of synthesis, right? Because most people have been conditioned to understand reality as a discrete series of truths that are statically true about the things that are statically in the material world. Right? That's it's one of the problems that dialectic thinking is trying to get people to understand, is that the truth, whatever thing it is that you think is true, this isn't something which is concrete. It cannot be, because whatever this truth is, it's a truth that you share. Necessarily, whatever the truth is that you believe, and what I mean is everything. Right, I'm coming back to this, where it's up here now, but I'm responding to Curse Chaos. Everything is. So we're dedicating our time and energy and effort to the recreation of ideologies and ideas so that we can assert our own truths about what is true about the world. But we don't exist in the citadel of our own mind. We exist in a world of others. We exist in a plurality. So what we express, how we live, our vita activa, how we are, is something which is dialectic. It's something that we put out and get feedback from, and then put out and then get feedback from, and put out and then get feedback from, continually. And so whatever truth it is that I'm looking at, that I believe is true, is a true thing about the world. This true thing isn't mine and mine alone. Because if this truth has any meaning and value, then I use this to navigate the world of others. Which means that that truth is meaningful to those people too. And is also theirs to some extent. That I can't affect, or that I don't have direct control or direct access to. There are things which are truths which I hold, which others don't have access to, that other people can't directly interfere with. But those truths have to be negotiated by the world I find myself in. That is the world of others. That is the plurality in which I find myself. My material conditions. Welcome in, Biting Gale. It's so good to see you. Thank you for the lurk. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Everybody, I'm going to give a shout out for Biting Gale. Go follow Biting Gale. They are musically talented and they are super based. Oh, and I want to see what happens. Oh, okay. I thought maybe I would get a picture, but it's that's still cool. Good. Yeah, I need to do something else cooler with that thing. I just don't know how to do anything with that yet. Still figuring out all the kinks of Firebot. For a second, I couldn't remember the name of the program I was using. All right, so to come full circle. Oh no, where did it go? Oh, it's up here. To come full circle. Of course. So Curse Chaos asked the question. Right, good. Truth doesn't exist sans humanity. Great. Absolutely. Excellent comment. But to respond to what Curus Chaos asked, so in short, gender is a form of worship. Yes. And that's something that I was talking about before. Actually, the whole reason for this whole stream is because there's something that I brought up previously that I think keeps getting explained incorrectly. So one of the things that I've talked about on stream a few times is that when it comes to what is really real about the world, what we can actually know, the most concrete truths that we have access to, those concrete truths exist in our moral relationships with other people. All the other things that we believe are true truths about the world are nothing but ideological constructs that are the faculties of our apprehension that we use to make sense of the material world. The world isn't made up of math and words. You understand the world through math and words. The world isn't made up of geometric shapes. You understand, you apprehend the world geometrically because you must, because your brain needs to have some kind of mechanism, some vehicle, some access. No, not access. Some filter with which it can use to construct salient information in a way that's helpful for your brain to process that information. So it's a mistake to mistake the math that you use to understand the world for the world itself. It's a mistake to understand the material atoms that make up the chair as reality. You understand chairness. You understand the world through these different concepts. When it comes to real truth, the closest, most immediate access to truth that we have is the truths that we find in our moral communities, in our moral relationships with each other, with others. The truths that we make with our interactions and our relationships are actually really real. And I sometimes would contrast this with our national ideologies or with our job, right? Our role or station or our profession, or we might confuse this with our gendered social constructs, right? These are all ideological, and none of these things are real at all. They don't actually tell us about the material world. These are ideas that we use to apprehend and understand the world. And we can change these social constructs. Gender can be whatever it is that we want to understand it as, right? There is not a material reality about gender to be understood that we can detach from the material reality to understand in some kind of rational way, in the way that Immanuel Kant supposes that we can, right? That we can make sense about math and science and morality in this way by looking at the particulars in the situation and abstracting about those things out to understand how those moral principles relate to each other. You can't do that. When you abstract things out of the material, you abstract out the substance and the meaning and the relationship which gives those things any relevance to us in the first place. So Yes, gender isn't tangible. You can't go to anywhere in the world and touch gender, right? It's something that we create and recreate with our living lives, right? And the most truthy truths that we can get about gender, the most truthy truths can be found in how we treat and respect each other. Right? So, one of the most important truths, I think, about gender is that gender is dangerous. If we want to come up with actual facts, real facts that we can say about gender, right? That's one. Gender's dangerous. It can get you killed. Right? That's a material reality. We can look at the moral relationships of our moral communities and understand truths about gender. And from that, nobody can extrapolate out that it's a binary, because there's too much controversy about that. There's too much disagreement about that. But that gender is dangerous is something about which there is overwhelming consensus. Being femme presenting is dangerous in itself, right? And that's one of those things that when I've years and years and years ago, when I first began investigating the ethical issues around transgenderism, before I knew I was a they them, when I was first engaging with the ideas and first engaging with the concepts, one thing that didn't make sense to me is why anybody would volunteer to be female. I don't know why anybody would be on the outside looking in and go, I want some of that. Hey, I don't get paid the same amount. Other people don't respect my ideas. I'm not going to be able to get property in some situations. People are just going to not respect my autonomy or my rights, or right. Who is looking in and going, yeah, the grass is greener over there. Yeah, no. It didn't make sense to me why anybody with the choice would make the choice to opt in to the more oppressed of the two of the genders. If it was a choice, why is anybody right? And it took me quite a while of engaging with the content, and I had probably been studying transgenderism for about 2 years before I really started to figure it out, that it wasn't a choice, that it was a matter of actual biological necessity, actually, for some people to pursue this, or the consequences are that severe, or that dire, or literally life and death. Right? That's I don't know if it took me that long. Maybe I'm exaggerating, giving myself a harder time than I need to, but it's something that it didn't make sense to me. If it was a choice, why anybody would choose the more oppressed class, right? Why would you want to be right? So I don't know. Okay. Let me look at my notes, because I think it's time to switch gears. Not yet. Wait. Okay. Yes. So let's in a lot of ways we're gonna backtrack a little bit rather than keeping on going and coming around full circle. No, actually, let's finish out that circle. Because we're really at the end of the circle anyways. I was summarizing a lot of the points that we were on about. Let's cap that then with this. So how do I want to do this? Before stream, this is one of the notes that I made before stream, and I thought about writing a whole paragraph as a note, and I should have. I should have just written the whole paragraph because I was trying to condense a whole bunch of complex ideas into one single sentence, and I've lost the trail of some of those ideas. But okay, I'm getting it back. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting it back. Okay. 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 Right. So, okay. I'm sorry for all of the silence, everyone. I just really want to make sure I'm getting this right. So, because I don't want to have to backtrack again, because that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that I'm gonna start and then I'm gonna have to backtrack and I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure I thought about this in how I want to get there. So in the process of Vita Activa. Right. So, yes, that's a good way. That's a good way to go about this. In the process of Vita Activa, there's a dialectical relationship that has to do with our identity and how we move that identity through the world. Right? So, when I was talking about me at the grocery store and people are going to walk away with whatever truth they have of me, and I don't get to negotiate that, right? That this is a part of the participation in the plurality, where we are coming to some ideas about what is and what is true through our negotiations with others in the world. We don't get to be the sole authors of what's true. Nobody does. Okay, so while we are going about the process of recreating the world, going through interpellation, that is, we are being shaped by the world, but we are shaping the world with our actions and ideas about what is right and good. The way that Western academic traditions of science and thought have evolved is to segregate distinct aspects of the world. Right? We've got the sciences, but we've also got like soft sciences, right? I mean, we might not call psychology a science, or it be a soft science, or other kinds of social science, maybe, or soft sciences. And then those are different categories than mathematics. And that's a different category necessarily than engineering. And all of these categories are different than religion, or from ethics, or from whatever these other categories. All of these categories are distinct. They have their own language. They have their own rules. And there's generally, within the disciplines, there's not a lot of crossover, which is why we are okay with having economic systems that are oppressive. Because when we are doing economics, we are not concerned with how economics affects people's lives. When you go to college and you study to be an economist, you are concerned with dollars and efficiency and with productivity. Those are the values with which you establish your frameworks for understanding economics. So there's a reality that this economic policy is going to make people homeless, or this economic policy is going to have detrimental effects on this other group of people. But we don't consider that, despite the fact that we necessarily should, right? It is the case that every economic choice literally is always a moral choice. Every time, for everyone, anywhere in the world, throughout all time, who has ever made an economic decision, that decision has also necessarily been a moral decision. Right? Despite the fact that the person who is making that decision probably didn't realize. And they probably didn't realize on purpose. This has to do with the banality of evil. Right? So some of you are familiar with the concept of banality of evil, but probably not familiar with it in the context that I've just crammed it in. Right? Because we have separated out economics and banking from morality, right? These schools of rational thought, the frameworks which maintain how we understand these thoughts, aren't meant to be compatible with each other on purpose. The way that we teach economics and physics and health and science and ethics is in a way that is designed to keep us from being able to do all of these things all at once, despite the fact that that's how the world is. The world isn't broken up into neat, distinct categories that are easily defined. The world is messy and complicated, and everything always relates to everything else all the time. Always necessarily. Right? So the this has to do with the way that the state operates as well, and the way that the state centralizes power and adjusts power relationships in certain kinds of ways, so that these arenas maintain their distinctness. If the arenas didn't maintain their distinctness, it wouldn't be so easy for capitalism to keep the exploitation going. The point of what I'm on about where I'm going with this has to do with the broad overall theme. Everything you do all the time with all of your waking time is a form of worship. Always. And if we understand this in this way that I'm trying to get across, the lines that get constructed that separate me just doing my job from the moral reality that what I'm doing in my job is contributing to evils, right? That blurs. If we recognize how we spend our time and energy as devotion to the worship of ideas which we believe are worth perpetuating, then the distinctions which allow the banality of evil, that is, for the idea that some things are just a part of culture and society, or some things are just my job, or some things are just this way, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? That is the banality of evil. That you can go to work at Starbucks and not contribute to the genocide ongoing in Palestine, because you can't. Now that I've said that sentence, we also have to recognize that the baristas who go to work at Starbucks aren't deliberately intending to contribute to the ongoing genocide in Palestine. They are. I'm sorry, friends of mine that I know, that are people that I literally know in the real world, in my real life, who are baristas at Starbucks. I'm sorry, friends of mine, that this is the reality. You working that job at Starbucks is contributing to the ongoing genocide of Palestinians. But to what degree can we hold that individual barista responsible, morally speaking? Because it's not easy to just get a job. If you've had the same job for 4 or 5 years now, why would you want to give up all of that, all of the equity that you have devoted to the worship of your job, right? And this is I know that this is really a lot of complex ideas, and I hope I'm not losing anybody. And if I am, ask questions. But remember when I was talking about myself and me going to do my job, right? It's not as though I worship education. It's not as though I worship my college, per se, right? In the way that the Christian worships Christ, or the Muslim worships Allah. It's not quite that, but also not that. Because it is still, right? For me, my college is an effigy, becomes the idol at which I kneel to worship, metaphorically, right? The college becomes the cross or the statue of Mary, right? Through the instrument through which I accomplish my worship of the greater idea of education and academia, and that there should be a relationship of teachers and pupils, right? That is an institution worthwhile. These are things that I believe are worthwhile, such that I devote my time and energy and effort to the perpetuation of those things. Um, right. So, um, there are only so many vehicles by which I could accomplish that same end, right? Of my worship of education and the institution of teaching students, teaching pupils. There are only so many mechanisms and vehicles by which I can accomplish that dedication. When we are talking about people who are trying to survive in a capitalist hellscape, those people, in the same way that I do, those people have to dedicate their time and energy to efforts which they believe are worthwhile, maintaining their own lives, paying their own bills, right? Being able to pay rent and not being homeless and not being starving. These are worthwhile endeavors that they devote their time and energy and effort toward. And there are only so many vehicles through which people can accomplish those ends, right? So that's my long way of saying I agree, right? I don't hold those baristas personally accountable. But part of the reason why I don't hold those baristas personally accountable is because they are so detached from the truth of their own worship. Right? It is not the case that I absolve them of their responsibility to literally contributing to the genocide of Palestinian people, because they do. The material reality is that they do. But I understand that they are so divorced from that knowledge, from that reality, from the realization of the truth of their relationship to the place that they worship, through the vehicle of their worship. That's a better way to say it. Because the job it's just a way for them to keep themselves alive. Now, I'm trying to maintain that same the same framework, right? All of our waking moments are dedicated to worship. They are, or that they can be thought of in that way. But we don't know. We don't always understand the nature of the relationships that we utilize to accomplish our own ends and goals and projects. Yeah, I think, well, and I believe that there are probably people who work at Starbucks who are kind of aware, right? Not entirely ignorant. But I'd still have a hard time casting blame. Or right, let's put it this way. I'm not gonna put my finger in the face of any individual. Right? I'm not gonna. And I'm not going to because they live in a capitalist hellscape. Right? The people who are complaining about the ills of capitalism, but they're doing it on their iPhone, right? Yes, they are engaging in the world in such a way that recreates capitalism. That critique is actually quite solid. But but that critique doesn't matter in the face of the reality that those people don't have any other choice, right? If they're going to critique capitalism, they have to do it within the system that capitalism has given them, and that is going to perpetuate that system, right? And that's not to say that we give up on critiquing capitalism, because we must do so in a capitalist framework. But we do need to think more realistically about that material relationship, that by critiquing capitalism in a capitalist system in a way that perpetuates that capitalist system is self-defeating. That doesn't mean that we give up. That doesn't mean that we stop tweeting or communicating about the paradox of the internal antagonistic contradictions of capitalism. We just need to, well, it's not a need. I believe by better understanding the nature of these relationships, we can change, maybe only subtly, but we can change or affect the nature of these relationships in some way, right? Good. So, and the flip side, there's the other side of the banality of evil. So, one of the aspects of Hannah Arendt's account of the banality of evil that just gets completely overlooked, I've seen, it doesn't matter. It often, when people are treating Hannah Arendt's idea of the banality of evil, there's this focus on systemic processes as divorced from the individual and their place as a cog in that system, right? So much of the banality of evil discourse is really about this. The relationship between the individual and the system, right? That there's a system, and the system gives the person the idea that what they're doing is normal or natural or just a part of their job, right? And that the way that the system is constructed can get the person to do evil without the person recognizing that they're doing evil. So there's a lot of emphasis that's put on the system and how the system is constructed and how the system gets people to, and that's most of what I've been talking about so far, is I've been talking about that process and about the system itself. That one of the aspects that really doesn't get discussed is how these kinds of systems produce banally thinking people. People who believe that they can do things in the world and that the things that they do aren't moral. That's the consequence. And right, so when we are concerned about the increase of school shootings that is happening, that is a real thing, we might talk about banning the guns, or we might talk about metal detectors, or we might talk about police presence, or we might talk about a number of ways of dealing with this problem that don't have anything to do with the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is that our school systems are designed to be systems which condition children to believe that they are cogs in the machine and that they just need to do those things, right? We don't emphasize moral membership in a moral community at any point, right? That is never a part of the curriculum. That you are a member of a society and that society cares about you or is supposed to care about you. That's not a part of the curriculum. That other people at some point in your life are going to depend on you to do things for them. That is not something that is included in our curriculum. That you are the kind of person that will need other people. That you will have to depend on other people for your needs is not a part of our curriculum. And it's not a part of the way that our schooling systems teach people. Our schooling systems teach people what history has been, what their job is going to be, and how to accomplish that job. And these children are conditioned by a system that doesn't see them as people and teaches them not to see themselves as people or the others around them as people, which is a large part, I would argue, of the problem of our epidemic of school shooters. But we have built our systems of early education on purpose in ways that program people to dehumanize others on purpose. What do you expect is going to happen there? When the system is designed on purpose to teach humans to dehumanize others, right? So there's, but this also has to do with the fact that school teachers believe that they go to school and do their job. And so long as they're ticking off the boxes and they're doing the things that are expected of them, and they're out doing, accomplishing all the things that are outlined in their contracts, that they're doing good. Right? They don't recognize the moral salience. Well, and some of them do, I would imagine, that there are a lot of early education people, a lot of early educators out there who are very acutely aware of this, right? I don't want to come off as being hyperbolic or making a monolith of any group or making any sweeping, hasty generalizations. But I'm aware of the system itself, and I'm aware of how the system treats people, and I'm aware of what systems do to people that are treated a certain kind of way. And when the system is insistently and consistently dehumanizing of you, it's sometimes hard to remember that you are a person and the people that you're supposed to be doing your job for are also people. I know, because I've been dehumanized in a job. I have felt like a cog in the machine. I have gone to work and not recognized the moral salience, not recognized that every moment that I am doing that job, I am doing something moral. We never get to divorce ourselves from the moral community in which we live, the moral world in which we live, or the moral responsibilities that we have as moral beings in the plurality in which we find ourselves. But we habitually turn off that moral flashlight all the time to do our job or to drive to our work or to do whatever it is that we're doing home by ourselves. And that's the mistake. Your culture and society has conditioned you, has gotten you to accept the reality that you can just turn off your moral thinking, that you can turn off your moral lens, despite the fact that that's the only thing that ever really matters. All the other things are just constructs, just social constructs, and don't actually have to do with the real world. All right. I think I'm about done streaming today. There's one other thing sitting here on this list that's staring me in the face. And I think that I would like to take that on a whole other tangent of its own anyway. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about with regard to this topic that we're discussing today, faith and worship as biopower, right? So faith and worship as let me finish, because I didn't finish unpacking this analogy. Faith and worship as biopower. So with this phrasing, I would like you to think of structure and superstructure, or base and superstructure, right? Well, or rather, the other way around: superstructure and base. So, faith and superstructure. I want you to understand that the ideologies, the kinds of things that Marx was talking about that convince poor people to vote against their own interest and to advocate on behalf of the bourgeoisie, right? The class trader. The kinds of ideological realities about the world that make up the superstructure, right? This is faith. The faith that we have and that people have. Worship is the base. And this is a part of Marxism that I see people get wrong all the time. Welcome in, Zugos Villain. Great to see you. Good to have you here. I hope you're doing well. Is one of the mistakes that people make is they think about the base as stuff, as physical material things, and rather material conditions. You are a part of the material conditions. What you do and what you believe and how you act, right? Your actions are a part of the material conditions. It's not just stuff. It's not just the things. It's also what you do make up the material conditions in which you find yourself. So, right, faith is the superstructure, the ideological beliefs that we maintain with our continual worship. Right? That's the analogy should be coming together, right? That's faith and worship as biopower, in the same way that Foucault would talk about those ideas as biopower. And this is power knowledge, right? Good. Good. I'm glad you've been lurking and hanging out. It's been a fun conversation. All right. Okay. So the last thing that I had on my list to talk about with regard to this, now that we've brought, I've made the full thing explicit, has to do with the distinction between truth and knowledge. Yes. Yeah, so, and that's why I want that, especially now that we've had the conversation that we've had today. I expected that this was going to be something that was subsumed into this topic, but now that I've fleshed this topic out fully without this, that's going to be a whole thing in itself. So, truth and knowledge are not the same thing. And what I mean is, well, it's not just that they're not the same thing. There is no correspondence. There is actually almost no meaningful relationship between truth and knowledge. And we'll have to unpack that. And I'm going to unpack that later. That's another Zizek problem. And we might even watch a video on Zizek to unpack that. Good. Have faith in liberation, I guess. Yes. See, and this is the kind of thing that I think is really helpful, and why I wanted to have the conversation that we've had today in the way that we've had it, is because this is you remember when we were talking about how Marx is sometimes not idealistic enough, right? Or sometimes too idealistic. He misses the material conditions because of his own idealism, but also lacks the utopian element necessary to get us to really care about his. You remember we were talking about his over materialism sometimes misses the spirit and sentiment that is driving people towards revolution, right? That there's feelings about this and they feel a certain way about it, and that actually matters. That they are driven towards some kind of goal that's worthwhile. I think that we can rescue Marx in that. We can rescue Marx in both ways. When Marx becomes too idealistic and misses the material conditions, we can reuse this analogy of faith and worship to illustrate the ways in which Marx himself was too much of an idealist who focused too much on principles and wasn't concerned enough with actually being honest about his material conditions. And we can rescue Marx from his tendency to focus solely on the material conditions and forget about the spirit of the project, that we all understand a better world is possible, right? That we want to live in as close as paradise as possible, right? That sometimes Marx's material analysis doesn't appeal to people who want a better world because he doesn't provide a pathway to a better world, actually. Right? Does that make sense? I think that this incorporation can give us something to have faith in. It can give us something to have faith about. That can stay in the back of our mind while we toil in the material conditions. Right? It gives us a point of or some kind of North Star. That evokes in us an emotional response, a needy response. In that, one last thing that I want to contrast. Good, is if you I pick on Christianity so much, but lots of Christians talk the talk, right? They'll say stuff on Facebook and they talk about how much devotion they have, but when it comes down to it, they're not out in the street feeding the hungry or trying to house the homeless or taking the shirts off their backs to help other people, which is literally what what the whole thing is about, right? So the last point that I want to stress here is think about Christian hypocrisy, the kind of people who will talk about suffer the children to come unto me, but then they vote for policy for putting children in cages, right? This disconnect from reality for people who believe that they're Christian, but don't engage in the actual worship, that don't engage in activities that demonstrate that they believe these values are true, because they don't, right? Their actions demonstrate that they don't believe that these things are really real. Because if Christians really believed that there was a God who was going to judge them for their actions in the world would reflect some judgment God who wants them to do good things. But that's not what they believe. They believe that they can do what's in the book. They're going to get into heaven. They got mine. Fuck you. Right? That's what they believe. Right? They don't live out their ideals with their actions and with how they recreate the world around them. Their worship is flaccid. Right? They talk the talk, but when it comes down to it, what they believe is clearly something different. They demonstrate a different belief with their actions. So on that note, right, when we are engaged in our activities of building a revolution, right, we need to be sure that we are not just being hypocrites, that we're not just talking the talk, that what we are doing in the real world with our actions and with how we recreate the world reflect the values that we espouse, right? And that's right. This faith and worship relationship really helps to hammer that home, right? If you actually believed in helping your neighbor, that's what you would be doing. But clearly you don't. Right? And so we want to be able to avoid that same kind of hypocrisy. I was thinking of the Jushi quote about the people are my God. The people are my God. Yeah, I do like that. Anarchism versus Marxism debate. Okay. Yeah, we should actually. That's a really good idea, Jane. I'll dedicate some time to try and working up that. Maybe we can even get some people. I want to have people on. I want to have guests, and I want to let you all talk more. I think I could really learn a lot from you all if you were less restricted. So I would like to start moving the channel towards being more inclusive, and I would like to have sessions or whole streams where I've got chatters on, and we can actually chat in real time, and then you can tell me your ideas rather than having to go through this medium, which makes it much more difficult for you to convey ideas, especially when I just talk and I don't slow down, and I forget what I was talking about 2 minutes ago. Utopianism is necessary to make the material more reasonable. It's like the violent flank makes the non-violent demands more reasonable. All right, okay. And one needs the other. We materialists need the utopians to be the flank. Yeah, yes. And I think that there's a lot of value to that, right? That's part of the diversity of tactics too, Kayamatara, that often gets overlooked, right? The reason why we employ a diversity of tactics is because of this, is because we literally need each other. And not just I need other people to do these tasks. I need other people engaged in the theory and praxis in a way that makes me reflect, right? That makes me think about what it is that I'm doing in my material conditions. That this is what we need, is to to help each other and to rub off on each other and we need that. We need each other. Means and ends. Unity principle is important. Yep. The bit about utopianism and idealism I don't find convincing. But not so much that I feel a need to get yeah. Well, and that's and that would be even better, right? What we want are people that are not on the same page about these things. And hopefully we will be able to walk away from those conversations also still not entirely on the same page about things, because our differences are valuable. Our differences are helpful, and they help us understand how to better overcome the challenges that we have. So that's I think that's a good point to end on too, is to reaffirm this idea that we need to be able to come together in our spaces where we agree on overarching terms. Like everybody that's here, I believe is interested in a liberated Palestine and is interested in LandBack. Right there are umbrellas that we can all be under. There's nuance and there's difference in how we think about these things. And rather than us shoveling off some of our ideas so that we can be in a tent or in a certain kind of bandwagon, we should feel comfortable in the spaces that we are in to bring our differences to those spaces so that others can see those differences and learn and grow from those differences in the way that we learn and grow from the differences of others. Good. All right. Good. I think I'm just gonna wrap it up there. Let's find somebody to raid out to. Find a raid target. Okay. Huh. All right. Yeah, there you go. I think I waited too long. That's all right. That's all right. Oh, Hannah Reloaded is on. There we go. That's a good community of people. Let's go hang out with let's go hang out with Hannah Reloaded. Hey, there we go. Good. All right, this has been such a fantastic stream. Yet again, thank you everyone so much for being here and for all the amazing ideas and the pushbacks and the clarifications, and you all are just fantastic. The need for any particular viewpoint or belief, we need each other, right? The humanity holding these beliefs are all valuable. That's my unity. Yes, absolutely, 100%. I completely agree. Zugosh Villain, it's so good to see you. Thank you, Kayamatara. Jane, it's always amazing to have you guys in chat. Thank you. Trash Nomancer, I'm going to be meeting up with you, catching up with you on Discord a little bit later. Vitingale stopped in for a little bit. It was good to see you, Vitingale. I hope you have a good one. Nova Rider, I appreciate you all so much. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And oh, hi, Street Cat Love. I'm just leaving, but it's good to see you. Until the next time I see you all, be excellent to each other.